Imagine waking up in the middle of the night aboard a massive ocean liner. A gentle vibration runs through the hull, and people in the corridors begin to murmur anxiously. This isn't a dream. The date is April 14th, 1912. You're a passenger on the legendary Titanic, and the ship has already hit an iceberg. In a few hours, it will sink. Panic, the cold ocean, and thousands of people all around. But the main question remains: what to do, where to go, and who to trust. How to survive this situation. Find out at the end of the video. You just felt a strange jolt. Not a hard blow, but a long scraping sound, as if something enormous were being slowly dragged along the side of the ship. The walls in the cabin shook slightly. Then everything became quiet again. The music in the salons continues to play. People are laughing. Many haven't even woken up. If you go out into the corridor, you can see confused passengers. Someone asks a steward what happened, but he answers calmly. Nothing serious, just a short stop. Some even go up on deck to look at the iceberg they've left behind. But the sailors are in a different mood. They're looking at the ship's bow too closely. A few minutes later, the stewards begin to make their way through the cabins. They politely ask passengers to dress warmly and go above. Don't panic, just in case. And this is where most people made their first mistake that night. They decided they had plenty of time and stayed in their cabins to pack their things or wait for news. But the truth is, the first minutes after a collision can decide whether you survive or not. And the main question arises: is it worth going up on deck right away? Or should we first try to understand what is really going on? The answer is simple. There's no time to waste. If the crew asks you to come on deck, you must do so immediately. It's in the first minutes after the collision that you have your most valuable asset: time. Most passengers still don't understand what's happening, which means you have the opportunity to act faster than everyone else. As you climb the stairs to the upper decks, you notice a strange atmosphere. People emerge from their cabins in coats and robes, some laughing, others discussing the iceberg as if it were just another unusual adventure. Some passengers even take photos next to chunks of ice lying on the deck. But a closer look at the crew reveals a completely different mood. The sailors speak quietly. Officers move quickly between the bridge and the decks, and engineers descend below to the flooded compartments. At this moment, something is already happening below that will decide the ship's fate. Water begins to fill the forward compartments. The Titanic was considered virtually unsinkable because its hull is divided into watertight sections, but the iceberg damaged too many of them at once. This means the ship is doomed. However, no one is telling the passengers this yet. And while most people are still calmly strolling the deck, you face an important question. How can you use these precious minutes to increase your chances of survival? This time must be used for one thing: to find the right place on the ship. While most passengers still don't understand the gravity of the situation, you have a rare opportunity to find yourself in a place where the fate of those on board will soon be decided. We're talking about the lifeboats. As you ascend to the upper deck, you might notice a long row of boats secured to special mechanisms along the side. There are almost no people around them yet. Some passengers are strolling nearby, looking at the ocean, or discussing the strange incident of the night. But few know one important detail. There are more than 2,000 people on board the Titanic, and the lifeboats are only enough for about half of them. This information is currently known only to the crew. Therefore, the first minutes after the collision are a rare moment when there are almost no queues at the lifeboats. Some people even refuse to board the first boats, believing that abandoning this huge ship is simply stupid. That's why the very first lifeboats will be half empty. You need to get on one. But this opportunity has one serious problem. The Titanic is not just a ship. It's a vast, floating city divided into social classes. And if you find yourself on the wrong deck or in the wrong part of the ship, getting to the lifeboats can be much more difficult than it first appears. If you're a first-class passenger, the route to the lifeboats is relatively straightforward. Wide staircases lead directly to the promenade decks where the boats are stored. Stewards are on duty nearby, ready to assist and explain what to do. Many wealthy passengers emerge into the fresh air, bundled up in coats, and dismiss the whole thing as a strange, nighttime occurrence. But if you're in second or especially third class, the situation is quite different. The Titanic's lower decks are a veritable labyrinth of narrow corridors, staircases, and closed doors. Some passages are blocked, others lead to dead ends. People begin to wander, trying to find their way up. Officially, these partitions exist for order and to control passenger flow, but in a critical situation, they become a serious obstacle. Meanwhile, the ship begins to shift its position almost imperceptibly. While it's almost impossible to feel, observant passengers notice. The Titanic's bow is slightly lower than before. Water continues to enter. Every minute now counts. If you want to survive, you need to get to the upper decks as quickly as possible. But there's another problem. When the truth about the disaster begins to reach the people, the calm on board will disappear. And then, what all captains fear will begin. Panic. Panic on a ship never begins instantly. At first, it's just alarming rumors. Some say the ship has sustained a serious breach. Others insist it's just a precaution. People whisper about the incident, trying to figure out if they should even worry. But gradually, signs emerge that can no longer be ignored. Women and children begin to be brought onto the deck. Officers remove the tarpaulins from the lifeboats and prepare them for launching. The sailors work quickly and silently. And it is at this moment that many passengers first begin to realize that something truly serious is happening. However, a strange paradox arises. Despite the alarming atmosphere, many still refuse to board the boats. A small wooden lifeboat in the middle of a vast, cold ocean seems far more dangerous than a brightly lit giant liner. So the first boats are lowered almost empty. If you're nearby, you have a chance to get a seat. But this is where a new problem arises. The officers start repeating the same command over and over again. Women and children first. And if you're a man, the situation becomes dramatically more complicated. Then the next question arises. If you're not allowed into the lifeboat, what rescue plan do you even have? The situation is becoming critical. The officers at the lifeboats are strictly maintaining order. You are stopped and asked to step back. At first glance, it seems like your chances are slim. But if you watch closely, you'll notice an important detail. Many women are afraid to board the boats. The night is dark, the ocean is vast, and the lifeboat looks small and fragile. Some passengers even refuse to leave the ship without their husbands. Because of this, the first lifeboats leave far from full. And it's precisely at these moments that some men still get a chance to take the empty seats, especially if they stand next to the lifeboats as they board and assist the crew. But time is running out. The ship's bow begins to noticeably dip into the water. Now it's visible even to the naked eye.
The people on deck become increasingly restless. The musicians continue to play, trying to keep the peace among the passengers. And suddenly, through the din of voices, a new sound is heard. A dull metallic creaking somewhere inside the ship. The internal partitions are beginning to break. And when this happens, the flooding process will accelerate dramatically. By this point, it's clear. Time is running out. The Titanic's bow is already deep in the water, and the ship begins to tilt upward. What was once a barely noticeable tilt now becomes a steep angle. People on deck begin to slide, clinging to railings, ropes, and any protrusions. Panic becomes real. Some try to reach the last collapsible lifeboats. Others simply run, not knowing where they're going. The officers try to free the last rafts, but the ship is already tilted too far, making their work increasingly difficult. At this point, many make a fatal mistake. They jump into the water unprepared. The icy ocean seems like the only way out, but in reality, it's almost guaranteed death. If you find yourself in this situation, the most important thing is to prepare for cold water. Put on a life jacket, and if possible, wear warm woolen clothing, which retains heat longer even when wet. Look around and find any wooden structure, a table, a door, a piece of furniture, or a piece of decking. Such a thing can keep you afloat and reduce heat loss. And when the moment becomes inevitable, jump not just into the ocean, but with this object to immediately gain support in the icy water. And then comes the moment everyone dreads. The Titanic's enormous hull rises higher and higher, the strain on the ship becoming monstrous. And at some point, the metal gives way. With a deafening crash, the liner breaks in two. For those on board, this means the end of any hope of stability. The bow is already disappearing beneath the water, and the stern seems to freeze for a few moments before also beginning its final descent. Then the ocean swallows the ship, and all that remains is darkness, icy water, and the screams of hundreds of people. Many try to swim, but almost immediately realize a terrible thing. The main enemy here isn't depth, but cold. Water whose temperature is close to freezing saps their strength in minutes, knocks out their breath, and makes their bodies uncontrollable. This is where most people die. But some survive because they manage to do one thing: find a piece of wreckage, an overturned lifeboat, or any surface that keeps them at least partially above water. And yet, even this is not enough. Because the most terrifying question lies ahead: how to survive in the icy ocean long enough to wait for rescue. To understand how to survive in such a situation, you need to know a few rules confirmed by the Titanic disaster. First and foremost, stay on the ship as long as possible. While the hull floats, it's the best protection from the icy ocean. People who jumped too early almost always died of the cold. The second rule is to immediately search for any floating surface. This could be an overturned collapsible lifeboat, a wooden door, a piece of broken furniture, or part of the deck. Even if you only get halfway out of the water, your body will lose heat much more slowly. The third rule is to not panic and not waste energy on pointless swimming. Energy drains very quickly in icy water, and chaotic movements only accelerate hypothermia. Fourth, stay close to other people. This helps you stay warm and increases the chances of being spotted by rescuers. And finally, most importantly, don't give up. Because help did come that night. The Titanic's radio operators broadcast distress messages until the very end, hoping that a ship was close enough to come to the rescue. And one such ship was indeed nearby. It was the passenger liner Carpathia. Its radio operator received a distress signal in the dead of night, around 12:30 a.m.
The captain immediately ordered a change of course and proceeded toward the disaster site at maximum speed. The Carpathia was 90 kilometers from the Titanic and was forced to navigate through ice fields, risking collisions with icebergs. The ship's full speed was approximately 14 knots, but the captain ordered the engines to be pushed to the limit. The Carpathia eventually arrived at the site of the tragedy, approximately 1 hour and 40 minutes after the Titanic had completely sunk. It was her crew who began picking up survivors from lifeboats and the icy ocean. For those clinging to wreckage or capsized boats, those hour and a half of waiting became a real struggle for life. History shows that many survivors found themselves in lifeboats precisely because they acted quickly, didn't panic, and were in the right place at the right time. If you knew the rules in this video, your chances of survival would be much higher. The Titanic disaster was a tragedy, but it also left important survival lessons. And who knows, perhaps one day this very knowledge will save someone's life. Subscribe to the channel for more stories and tips that could prove invaluable.